The way you see the world will determine the way you live in it. That may sound simple at first, but it's one of the most powerful truths I've ever come to understand. Not because it makes life easy, but because it makes life doable, even when it's hard. And one day, it will be hard. There will be days when things don't go your way, when you lose everything or someone you care about. When you try your best and still fall short. When life feels unfair, uncertain, or just plain heavy. And in those moments, you'll be tempted to believe the story your fear is telling you. This is the end. This is hopeless. This means you're not enough. But here's the truth I want you to hold onto both your hands. Perspective is a superpower. It won't change what happens to you. It won't erase the pain or setbacks, but it will change how you move through them. It will change what you do with the pain, how you carry the setbacks, and what kind of person you become because of them. It's like this. Two people can face the same storm. One grows stronger, the other breaks. One finds meaning, the other finds only misery. The difference isn't the storm, the difference is how they see it. That's what this letter is about. Learning how to shift the way you see so you can shift the way you live. So you can stand in the middle of the chaos and still find clarity. So you can reframe struggle, not as proof of failure, but as an invite to grow. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to figure this out alone. As siblings, you are mirrors and anchors of each other. Sometimes, when you are stuck in a dark perspective, the others will be the only ones to help shine the light. You'll need each other, not to fix, but to remind one another. There's another way to see this, and you are not alone in it. So this letter will show you how to build that lens, how to hold it when the world goes blurry, and how to help each other find it again when someone drops theirs. Because your perspective isn't just how you see the world, it's how you shape it. There was a season in my life, maybe the hardest one, when I felt like I was losing pieces of myself. I was busy, overwhelmed, pulled in too many directions, and slowly, quietly, I lost contact with some of the most important people in my life. Not because of a fight, not because of anger or betrayal, just distance, silence, and drift. Calls went unanswered, messages were delayed, plans kept getting pushed, and eventually the space between us felt too wide to cross. At first, all I could feel was guilt. I kept thinking I failed them, I let them down. I told myself I wasn't showing up well enough, that I wasn't loving hard enough, that I damaged something that I couldn't be repaired. And the story in my head, my perspective, was eating me alive because from that perspective, I was a failure. From that perspective, distance meant disconnection, less contact meant less love. But then something happened, and in that moment, my whole perspective shifted because then I realized it wasn't about the number of calls, texts, or visits. It wasn't about how often we connected. It was about how deeply we had. It was about the quality of presence, the moments that mattered, the fire, the conversation, the eye contact, the laughter, the silence that didn't need filling. That single message reframed everything. It helped me see that while life had pulled us apart in time and space, the bond wasn't broken, and that my shame was distorting something that was still alive, just quiet. Still real, just different. It taught me to see connection not as quantity, but as quality. And more than that, It taught me to give that same grace to others. To understand that people will drift sometimes, not out of malice, but out of life. And when they come back or when they reach out again, what matters is the truth of that connection, not the frequency of it. And you, my children, will experience this too. You'll lose touch with people, you'll feel forgotten, you'll drift from the people you love. But don't let that trick you into thinking love has disappeared. Shift your perspective, ask what still remains, not just what's missing. And here's where siblings come in. You can be the ones who remind each other of what's real. When one of you feels like you've failed someone or been forgotten, you can say, "Hey, do you remember that time we sat on a porch for hours and just got it? That mattered. It still does." You can hold the memory for each other. You can hold the truth for each other when someone's perspective goes cloudy. Because sometimes we forget, sometimes we spiral, sometimes we can't see clearly. And that's when your job as siblings, your gift to each other, isn't to lecture or fix, it's to reframe. To say, maybe there's another way to see this. And that can change everything. Let me tell you something that's both simple and life-changing. The story you tell yourself about what's happening often matters more than what's actually happening. You could be facing the exact same situation as someone else, and your experience could be completely different. Not because life is different, but because your lens is. Perspective is the filter between reality and meaning. It's the frame around the picture, and that frame shapes everything. You've probably seen this already, even in small moments. Two people stuck in traffic, one is calm listening to music and the other is fuming, pounding on the steering wheel. Same delay, same road, completely different experience. Why? Because it's not just the event that shapes our lives, it's the interpretation. It's what we make it mean. When you begin to understand this, life opens up in ways that might have seemed impossible before. Pain doesn't disappear, but it does become purposeful. Struggle doesn't stop, but it becomes a source of strength. Failure doesn't define you, it refines you. Here's the truth I want you to carry. Perspective isn't about ignoring pain, it's about choosing what the pain will lead to. When something hard happens, most people ask, "Why me?" But I want you to learn to ask, "What now?" Or better yet, "What can this teach me?" Because every hardship, every frustration, heartbreak, or loss carries two things inside it: a wound and a lesson. And you don't always get to choose the wound, but you always get to choose whether you'll find the lesson. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything is great when it's not. It's about honesty with power. It's about standing in the middle of difficulty and saying, "This may be hard, but I still get to choose how I respond." And here's something even more powerful. You can help each other find that perspective when it's hardest to see on your own. When one of you is spiraling, caught in the feeling of failure or rejection, or it's not fair, the others can become the reminder. You're not stuck. This isn't the end. There's another way to see this. Sometimes the only thing we need is someone we trust to widen the frame, to help us step back and see that this moment, no matter how painful, isn't forever, that the story isn't over, that we're still in it, and we still have power. So practice that with each other, not to dismiss the pain, but to honor it by helping one another see its shape more clearly. to be the voice that says, yes, this hurts, and you're still growing. Yep, that was tough, but it's not who you are. It's just what is happening. Perspective is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. But when you offer it to someone else, especially being a sibling, it becomes an act of love. Perspective isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, like a muscle, like character, like trust. And just like anything worth building, it takes practice, especially when things are messy, confusing, or painful. Here are 4 ways you can begin shaping your perspective even in struggle, and how you can support each other along the way. Practice daily reframing. Every day, things happen that don't go the way you hoped. Some are small, someone cuts you off, a plan changes, you feel overlooked. Others hit deeper, like rejection, failure, unexpected loss. In those moments, it's easy to slip into a story of helplessness or blame. But what if you stop and ask, what else could this mean? What's one good thing that might come from this? If this is a test, what's it trying to teach me? This isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about looking for the wisdom inside the difficulty. Start by asking this once a day. Write it down. Even if the answer is small. I learned I cared more than I thought. Or, now, I know what not to do next time. When your brother or sister is stuck in a spiral, disappointed, frustrated, overwhelmed, you can ask them the same questions. Not to force them out of their feeling, but to gently widen their view. Do you want help seeing this differently? You might be the only one in that moment who can hold that mirror up. Always shift your language. Words shape reality, and the way you talk about something can either shrink you or strengthen you. Instead of, I have to do this, try, I get to do this. Instead of, this is the worst, try, this is hard, but I can handle hard things. Instead of, I failed, try, I learned something the hard way. This isn't about sugarcoating, it's about speaking from your power instead of your pain. And listen to each other's language too. If you hear a sibling tearing themselves down or stuck in black and white thinking, ask them, is this really true? Or is that just how it feels right now? It's one of the kindest things you can do. Help each other speak with the truth, not just emotion. Always ask better questions. Your brain is wired to answer whatever question you give it. So if you ask, why does this always happen to me? Your mind will find reasons to confirm that belief. But if you ask, what is this showing me? Or, how could this help me grow? Your mind will rise to meet that too. Try these questions the next time you feel upside down. What's the opportunity here I didn't expect? How can I use this to help someone else later? What would the best version of me do with this moment? And when one of your siblings is struggling, ask them these questions gently, without judgment. It might be the moment that changes how they see everything. Use shared motion to reset emotion. Sometimes the best way to shift your perspective is to move, not talk, not analyze, just move. Go outside, kick a ball, climb something, clean something, stretch, dance, walk, breathe. Motion shakes up the mind, and doing it together creates something even more powerful, emotional regulation through connection. If one of you is stuck, invite the others into movement. You don't even need to talk about the problem, just be together. Move together. Let this shift come gently. Perspective doesn't always show up in words. Sometimes it arrives in motion, in silence, in shared presence. These tools aren't magic. They are powerful, and they become even more powerful when you practice them together. Because as siblings, you're not just growing yourselves, you're helping shape how each other sees the world. And sometimes the best perspective comes from someone who loves you enough to say, "You're more than this moment, and I'm here with you while you find your way forward." One day you're going to look back on this moment that felt like it was going to break you, and you realize it built you. But in the middle of it, you won't see that. Not right away. You'll just feel the weight, the confusion, the sharpness of the struggle. That's when perspective matters most, not when things are easy, but when they are heavy. Because life won't always give you the answers in the moment. It won't always make sense as it's unfolding, but you can train yourself to look through the lens of meaning, not just emotion. You can choose to believe that the hard thing is part of your becoming, that the obstacle isn't the end of the road, it's the doorway to the next version of yourself. And when you forget that, because you will, your siblings will be there. Not just to comfort you, but to remind you of who you are. To say, "You're not seeing the whole picture yet, but I still see you, and I believe in what's on the other side of this." That's the legacy I hope you carry, not just for yourselves, but for each other. To not just survive struggle, but to reframe it. To not just rise alone, but to help someone else stand taller by the way you speak into their perspective. Because that's how families become strong, not by avoiding pain, but by walking through it with eyes wide open and hearts wide together. So when the world feels small, when something goes wrong, when it feels like the story is over, pause. Don't react. Don't run. Just breathe. Step back. Ask yourself, what am I choosing to see right now? And if the lens you're looking through feels dark or narrow, ask for help adjusting it. Lean on each other. Be that steady voice for your brother or sister when they forget who they are or what they're capable of. Remind each other, this isn't where it ends. This is just where it changes. Perspective doesn't always make things easier, but it makes you stronger. And when you help each other hold that strength, you become something rare. A family that doesn't just survive life, but transforms through it, together. With all my love, always, Dad.